The black and white photograph seems ordinary at first glance. A small boy, no older than 7, clutching a baseball in his tiny hands, standing in front of a weathered wooden fence. His cap is tilted slightly, shadowing eyes that stare directly into the camera with an unreadable expression. For decades, this image gathered dust in the archives of the Holloway County Historical Society, labeled simply, "Unknown Boy with Baseball, 1919. But photographs have secrets, and some secrets wait a century to be discovered. In the dim light of Boston University's Digital Archaeology Lab, Dr. Eleanor Webb adjusts her glasses as she leans closer to her monitor. The restored photograph of the boy fills her screen, the image now enhanced through a revolutionary imaging technology her team developed. What began as a routine digitization project for the university's partnership with small historical societies across New England has become something else entirely. "There's something about his eyes," Eleanor murmurs to her research assistant, Michael Chen, who stands behind her chair. "They don't match the innocence of his face." Michael nods. "That's what caught my attention too. Most children in photographs from this era either look frightened of the camera or they've been told to stand perfectly still. This boy looks aware, like he's trying to tell us something." Eleanor zooms in further on the baseball in the boy's hands. The worn leather sphere, once merely a blur in the original photograph, now reveals intricate details under their enhancement algorithm. "Wait, is that—" Eleanor's fingers fly across the keyboard, enhancing the contrast. "There's something written on the baseball." The image sharpens further, revealing faint handwriting across the curved surface of the ball. A name begins to emerge from the shadows of time. "James," Eleanor reads aloud, squinting at the screen. "I think it says James Sullivan." Michael leans in closer. "Can you make out anything else? A date, maybe?" Eleanor adjusts the settings again, increasing the resolution in small increments. The leather grain of the baseball becomes more distinct, the threading clearer, and beneath the name, a set of numbers slowly emerges. "There are dates here," she says. 1913 and 1919. She looks up at Michael, confusion evident in her expression. "If those are birth and death dates." "And this photograph was taken the same year he died," Michael finishes. "Maybe it's a memorial photograph." Eleanor sits back in her chair, her brow furrowed in thought. Post-mortem photography was common in that era, but this doesn't fit the usual pattern. The boy looks alive, not posed as they typically would with the deceased. What started as a routine restoration project is about to pull Eleanor and Michael into a century-old mystery that begins in the summer of 1919 in the small manufacturing town of Holloway, Massachusetts, a town that would never be the same after what became known as the Black Ridge Incident. July 12, 1919. Holloway was enjoying the prosperity that followed the Great War. The local textile mill ran day and night, employing most of the town. Workers had money in their pockets for the first time in years. The Spanish flu that had ravaged communities across America had finally released its grip. Life was returning to normal. On Maple Street, 10-year-old William Cooper practiced his pitching against the side of his father's shed. With each throw, the baseball made a satisfying thud against the weathered boards before returning to his waiting hands. William had dreams of becoming the next Walter Johnson or Cy Young. Baseball wasn't just America's pastime. For boys like William, it was everything. The summer air was thick with humidity, carrying the distant sounds of the textile mill, the rhythmic chugging of machinery that formed the heartbeat of Holloway. William had been practicing for nearly an hour, his arm beginning to ache pleasantly from the exertion. His white cotton shirt clung to his back with sweat, and his knickers were stained with grass from earlier sliding catches. From inside the house, his mother called out, "William, come wash up for supper." "Just 5 more minutes, Mother," he called back, winding up for another pitch. The ball hit the shed with a satisfying crack, leaving a mark on the already dented wood. Margaret Cooper appeared at the back door, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hair was pinned neatly away from her face, though a few strands had escaped in the heat of the kitchen. "William Cooper, I've called you twice now. Your father will be home any minute, and you know how he likes his supper on time." William caught the ball one last time and turned to head inside when something caught his eye. A boy he'd never seen before stood at the edge of their property, watching him. The stranger was younger, maybe 6 or 7, wearing clean but simple clothes and a cap that seemed too large for his head. The boy didn't move or speak, just stood perfectly still beside the white picket fence that separated the Cooper property from the lane. Something about his stillness made William pause. "Hello there," William called, taking a few steps toward the fence. "Do you want to play catch?" The boy didn't respond. He simply stared at William with an intensity that seemed strange for a child so young. His face was solemn, eyes dark beneath the brim of his oversized cap. "What's your name?" William tried again, approaching the fence between them. "Are you new in town? I haven't seen you at school." Still nothing. The boy remained statue-like, his gaze unwavering. Just as William was about to turn away, the boy spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "They're digging where they shouldn't be." William furrowed his brow. "What? Who's digging?" "At the factory, in the north corner, behind the big chimney." The boy's voice remained flat, emotionless. "They'll find something they wish they hadn't." A chill ran through William despite the summer heat. "What do you mean? What will they find?" The boy's expression didn't change, but his eyes seemed to darken. Something old, something that was buried for a reason. Before William could ask anything more, Mrs. Cooper called again from the doorway, her voice sharper now. "William, didn't you hear me calling? Supper's getting cold." William turned toward his mother's voice. "Just a minute, Mother. I'm talking to—" He gestured toward the fence, but when he looked back, the strange boy was gone. The lane was empty, without a trace of the visitor. "Talking to whom?" Margaret Cooper asked, peering down the lane. William stared at the empty space where the boy had stood seconds before. There was a boy here, a little boy I've never seen before. His mother's expression softened. "Well, invite your new friend for supper next time. Now come inside and wash up." As William reluctantly headed toward the house, he glanced back once more. The lane remained empty, but his eyes fell to the ground where the boy had stood. Something caught the evening sunlight, a small indentation in the dirt, as if someone had stood in that exact spot for a very long time, without moving. That night, William lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling as moonlight filtered through the thin curtains. The strange boy's words echoed in his mind. "They're digging where they shouldn't be." What did that mean? And how had he disappeared so quickly? From downstairs, he could hear his parents talking in hushed tones. His father had come home late from the mill, as he often did these days. William's father, Thomas Cooper, was a floor manager at the Blackridge Textile Mill, the largest employer in Holloway. Recently, he'd been working longer hours, returning home with a perpetual frown that even his mother's cooking couldn't erase. William crept to the top of the stairs, careful to avoid the third step that always creaked. "Expansion is moving too quickly," his father was saying. "Blackridge is pushing the men too hard. That north foundation wasn't meant to be disturbed. Surely Mr. Blackridge knows what he's doing," his mother replied. "The mill has been there for 30 years. There's something about that ground, Margaret. The old-timers won't go near it. Jenkins quit yesterday rather than work on the excavation." "Superstition," his mother dismissed. "You know how those old men are." "Maybe." His father's voice dropped even lower. "But I've seen how the earth looks different there. Darker. And sometimes when no one's around, I swear I can hear—" The conversation stopped abruptly as a floorboard creaked beneath William's foot. He froze, holding his breath. "William Cooper, is that you eavesdropping?" his mother called. Caught, William descended the stairs, trying to look innocent. "I was just getting a glass of water, Mother." His father sat at the kitchen table, still in his work clothes, a glass of whiskey in front of him. Something William rarely saw except on special occasions. "You should be in bed, son," Thomas said, his voice gentler than William expected. "Big day tomorrow. Isn't the school baseball team playing against Riverdale?" William nodded, grateful for the change of subject. "Yes, sir. Coach says I might pitch the second innings." Thomas smiled tiredly. "That's my boy. Now get some sleep." As William turned to go, a question burst from him before he could stop himself. "Father, is there digging happening at the mill? Behind the north chimney?" His father's smile vanished. He exchanged a quick glance with Margaret before asking, "Where did you hear about that?" "A boy mentioned it today." "A boy I've never seen before." Thomas leaned forward, suddenly intent. "What boy? What exactly did he say?" William hesitated, surprised by his father's intensity. "Just a boy who was watching me practice. He said they're digging where they shouldn't be, and they'll find something they wish they hadn't." The glass in Thomas Cooper's hand fell to the floor, shattering. Whiskey splashed across the clean linoleum. "Thomas!" Margaret exclaimed, already moving for a towel. But Thomas was staring at his son, his face pale in the kitchen's electric light. "What did this boy look like, William?" "Young, maybe 6 or 7. Dark hair, I think, under his cap. Serious looking. Did he tell you his name?" William shook his head. "No, sir. He disappeared when Mother called me in for supper." Thomas stood abruptly. "It's late. You should be in bed. But Father, now, William. The tone brooked no argument. William trudged back upstairs, more confused than ever. As he climbed into bed, he could hear his parents' voices again, more urgent now, though he couldn't make out the words. Outside his window, a gentle summer breeze rustled the leaves of the old oak tree. Just as he was drifting off to sleep, William thought he heard the soft thud of a baseball hitting wood, like his earlier practice. His eyes flew open, and he went to the window. In the moonlit yard below, there was nothing to see but shadows. Yet as he turned back to his bed, William couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him, watching the whole house, from the darkness beyond. 2 days later, William couldn't stop thinking about the odd encounter. After breakfast, he told his friend Charlie Martin about the strange boy and what he'd said. Charlie was a year older than William, with fiery red hair and a perpetual smear of dirt on his freckled face. Where William was cautious, Charlie was bold. Where William followed rules, Charlie made his own. They had been inseparable since first grade. "Let's go check it out," Charlie suggested immediately, always eager for adventure. "My pa works at the mill. I know a way in where the watchman can't see us." William hesitated. "I don't know, Charlie. My father seemed upset when I mentioned it. That just means there's something interesting going on." Charlie grinned, revealing a newly missing tooth. "Don't you want to know what they're digging for? Could be buried treasure or something." The prospect was too tempting to resist. It was Saturday, and neither boy was expected home until dinner time. They had the whole day to explore. The Black Ridge textile mill dominated the town's landscape, a massive brick structure with tall windows and an imposing chimney that belched black smoke day and night. William had never been inside, though his father worked there as a floor manager. From the outside, it looked like a fortress of industry, its walls stained dark from decades of smoke and steam. The boys made their way through town, past the general store where Mr. Parsons was arranging canned goods in the window, past Mrs. Elliott hanging laundry in her yard, and past the new Ford Model T that Dr. Wilson had purchased just last month, the only automobile in Holloway at that time, and still a novelty that drew admirers whenever it puttered down Main Street. As they walked, William noticed how the town seemed to be thriving after the war years. The Spanish flu that had taken so many lives the previous year was finally a memory. Store windows displayed goods that had been scarce during wartime: sugar, coffee, fine fabrics. Men in new suits tipped their hats to ladies in fashionable dresses. Holloway was prospering, and the mill was at the heart of that prosperity. "My pa says Mr. Blackridge is richer than ever," Charlie commented as they approached the mill. "Says he's bringing in new machines from England that can do the work of 10 men. Is your pa worried about losing his job?" William asked. Charlie shrugged. "Pa says there's always work for a man who knows how to fix things. He's good with machines." They circled around to the back of the mill property, where a tall fence separated it from the surrounding fields. Charlie led them through a hole in the fence at the back of the property, hidden behind a large thorn bush that tore at their clothes as they squeezed through. The summer heat intensified the smell of dye and cotton that perpetually surrounded the factory. As they crept along the building's edge, William could hear the rhythmic pounding of the looms inside, a mechanical heartbeat that never ceased, even on weekends. The ground beneath their feet vibrated with the mill's constant activity. "There," Charlie pointed. "The north corner, just like your mystery boy said." Behind the massive chimney, a section of ground had been disturbed. Fresh dirt was piled to one side, and wooden planks created a makeshift barrier around what appeared to be an excavation. Several shovels were propped against the wall, along with pickaxes and other digging tools. But despite the evidence of recent work, there were no laborers to be seen. Why would they be digging here? William wondered aloud, approaching the barricade cautiously. Charlie shrugged. "New addition, maybe? Pa said Mr. Blackridge is always looking to expand. Business is booming since the war ended." As they approached the site, William noticed something odd. There were no workers around, no tools left behind. Whatever digging had occurred seemed to have been abandoned in a hurry. The dirt at the edge of the excavation was loose, as if recently turned, but the tools looked untouched. "Look at this," Charlie said, pointing to the ground. A set of footprints led away from the excavation. Small footprints, like those of a child. William felt a chill despite the summer heat. Those looked like they were made by someone my age, or younger. Maybe some other boys had the same idea as us, Charlie suggested, though he sounded uncertain. "We should go," William said suddenly, feeling uneasy. "We're not supposed to be here." But Charlie was already climbing over the wooden barrier. "Don't be yellow, Will. Don't you want to see what they found? Reluctantly, William followed his friend. The hole was deeper than it had appeared from a distance, nearly 6 feet down. The sides were shored up with wooden beams, suggesting this was no hasty excavation but a planned project. At the bottom, something reflected the morning sunlight, a metal object partially exposed in the dirt. What is that? William squinted, trying to make out the shape. Charlie scrambled down the earthen slope for a closer look. Careful! William called, but his friend was already at the bottom of the pit, reaching for the metallic object. It's like a box or something, Charlie called up, but weird looking. Not like any box I've seen before. William was about to reply when a deep voice boomed behind them. What are you boys doing here? They turned to find Mr. Blackridge himself standing there, a tall, imposing figure in an expensive suit, his silver hair slicked back beneath a fedora. Despite the summer heat, he wore leather gloves, and a gold watch chain gleamed across his vest. His eyes, cold and gray as steel, moved from William to Charlie, who was scrambling to climb out of the pit. We were just exploring, sir, Charlie stammered when he reached the top. We didn't mean any harm. Blackridge's face remained stern, but his voice softened slightly. This is no place for children. There's dangerous equipment all around. You could get hurt. William noticed that, despite the mild tone, Blackridge's hands were clenched tight, the leather of his gloves stretching across the knuckles. What are you digging for, Mr. Blackridge? William asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Something flickered across the man's face. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. Just some routine foundation work, young man. Nothing interesting. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 nickels. Here, go buy yourself some candy at Grayson's and forget about this place. And don't come back. It isn't safe. As the boys hurried away, William glanced back over his shoulder. Blackridge was staring down into the hole, his posture rigid. Even from a distance, William could see that the man's hands were trembling. Did you see how scared he looked? Charlie whispered as they squeezed back through the fence. He wasn't scared, William argued, though he wasn't convinced. Just angry we were trespassing. No, he was scared all right. And did you see what I found? Charlie opened his hand to reveal a small object. A button, by the look of it, made of some dark material that didn't quite resemble metal or wood. You took that from the pit? William asked, alarmed. You need to put it back. Finders keepers, Charlie grinned. Besides, it's just a button. Probably fell off some worker's shirt. William wasn't so sure. The object in Charlie's palm didn't look like any button he'd seen before. It was perfectly circular, with strange markings etched into its surface. Symbols that resembled neither letters nor numbers. I don't like it, William said. I think we should throw it away. Charlie pocketed the object. Don't be such a baby. It's just a souvenir. As they walked back toward town, William couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. Several times he turned to look behind them, only to see empty street. What's got you so jumpy? Charlie asked after the 3rd time. Nothing, William replied, unconvinced. Just thought I heard something. They used their nickels to buy horehound candy at Grayson's general store, but William found he had little appetite for it. His mind kept returning to the excavation, to the strange object at its bottom, and to the look on Blackridge's face when he'd found them there. Most troubling of all was the memory of those small footprints leading away from the pit. Who else had been there before them? Could it have been the same boy who had warned him? That evening, William's father came home late from the mill, his face drawn with fatigue and something else. Worry, perhaps. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper than they had been that morning, and a smudge of dirt marred his usually immaculate work shirt. Is everything all right, Father? William asked as his mother served warmed-over stew. Thomas Cooper looked up, seeming surprised by the question. Yes, of course. Just a long day. He paused, studying his son. Why do you ask? William hesitated. Charlie and I were near the mill today. We saw the digging behind the chimney. His father's spoon clattered against his bowl. You were trespassing on mill property? We were just exploring, William said quickly. Mr. Blackridge found us and sent us away. Thomas and Margaret Cooper exchanged a glance that William couldn't interpret. His mother's hand went to the cross she always wore around her neck, a nervous habit William had noticed more frequently in recent days. You are not to go near the mill again, do you understand? His father said firmly. It's dangerous. Men are working. Heavy equipment. You could be seriously hurt. But why? What are they digging for? That's not your concern. His father's tone left no room for argument. Promise me, William. I promise. William mumbled, though his curiosity only grew stronger. Later that night, William heard his parents talking in hushed voices downstairs. He crept to the top of the stairs to listen, careful to avoid the creaking step. 3 more workers quit today, his father was saying. After what they found. Is it true? His mother asked. Could it really be from... I don't know. Blackridge called in some expert from Boston. They're keeping it quiet, but rumors are spreading. The children will be fine as long as they stay away from the mill. Blackridge assured us the situation is contained. But what about the Sullivan boy? Catherine hasn't been to church in days. William strained to hear his father's response, but a floorboard creaked beneath his weight. The conversation stopped abruptly. William, is that you? His mother called up. William crept back to his bed, his mind racing. What had they found? Why were workers quitting? Who was the Sullivan boy? And what did he have to do with Catherine, whoever she was? And most importantly, how did that strange boy know about the digging? William fell into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of deep holes in the earth and small footprints leading into darkness. The next morning, William woke early, grabbed his baseball, and headed outside to practice. The events of the previous day had left him unsettled, and baseball had always been his refuge when his mind was troubled. The familiar rhythm of throwing and catching helped clear his thoughts. As he rounded the corner of the house, he stopped short. The strange boy was there again, sitting on the edge of the porch steps. This time, William could see him more clearly in the morning light. The boy's clothes, though clean, were worn thin in places. His cap was indeed too large, slipping down to shadow his eyes. His face was pale, almost translucent, with a solemn expression that seemed out of place on such a young child. You went to see, the boy said. It wasn't a question. William approached cautiously. How did you know about the digging? The boy ignored the question. Did you see what they found? No. Mr. Blackridge sent us away. William moved closer. What's your name? I haven't seen you around Holloway before. James, the boy replied after a moment. James Sullivan. Sullivan, the name his parents had mentioned last night. William's curiosity deepened. Do you live near here, James? Is your mother Catherine? The boy's expression remained unchanged. We live by the river, in the company houses. The company houses were a row of identical cottages built by Blackridge for his workers, located near the river that powered the mill. They were small but well maintained, a point of pride for Blackridge, who often spoke about how well he treated his employees. William held out his baseball. Do you want to play catch, James? For the first time, the boy's serious expression softened. He reached for the ball, his fingers brushing against William's as he took it. William noticed how cold the boy's hand was, despite the warm morning. I used to love baseball, James said quietly, turning the ball over in his small hands. Used to? You're not much younger than me. William laughed. You've got plenty of time to play. James looked down at the ball in his hands. They're going to close it up again. Pretend they never saw it, but it won't stay hidden. What won't stay hidden? What did they find? James met William's eyes. Me. A chill ran through William despite the summer heat. Before he could respond, his mother called from inside the house. William, who are you talking to out there? William turned toward his mother's voice. Just a friend, Mother. When he looked back, James was gone, but his baseball lay on the ground where the boy had been standing. William picked it up, turning it over in his hands. There, written in faded ink across the leather, was a name, James Sullivan. He had never written his name on the ball. In fact, this didn't even look like his baseball. The stitching was different, the leather more worn. Yet somehow James had left him a different ball entirely. William stared at the name, a sense of dread building within him. What had James meant? They found me. And why had he spoken about baseball in the past tense? Back inside the house, William's mother was preparing breakfast, the smell of frying bacon filling the kitchen. Who were you talking to, dear? She asked again as she flipped the bacon in the cast-iron skillet. A boy named James Sullivan, William replied, watching her reaction carefully. He says they live in the company houses. The spatula slipped from his mother's hand, clattering to the floor. She bent to retrieve it, her face hidden from view. When she straightened, her expression was composed again, but William noticed her hand trembling slightly. I don't think I know the Sullivans, she said, her voice too casual. Is he in your class at school? No, he's younger, William said. But you mentioned him last night. You and Father were talking about the Sullivan boy and someone named Catherine. Margaret Cooper turned to face her son fully, her expression now serious. William Cooper, have you been eavesdropping again? No, ma'am. William lied. I just heard you mention the name as I was falling asleep. His mother studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Catherine Sullivan works at the mill. Her husband died in the war, leaving her with a young son to raise alone. That's all. But William could tell she wasn't sharing everything. Is something wrong with James? Is he sick? Enough questions, his mother said firmly. Wash up for breakfast. Your father's already gone to the mill. There was some kind of emergency. What kind of emergency? William. His mother's tone was warning enough. No more questions. At breakfast, William examined the baseball James had left behind. The name was written in a child's uneven script, the ink faded but still legible. Below the name was something else, a date, 1919. This year. He decided to visit Charlie after breakfast. Perhaps together they could solve the mystery of James Sullivan and the excavation at the mill. But when he arrived at the Martin house, he found Charlie confined to bed, allegedly with a summer cold. Mrs. Martin, her face pinched with worry, wouldn't let William see him. He's been feverish since last night, she explained, blocking the doorway. Delirious, talking nonsense. Dr. Wilson says it's just a passing bug, but I'm keeping him isolated just to be safe. Her eyes fell to the baseball in William's hands. Is that yours? Charlie was going on about a baseball last night in his fever. William clutched the ball tighter. Yes, ma'am, it's mine. What did Charlie say about a baseball? Mrs. Martin shook her head. Nonsense, like I said. Something about a boy with a baseball watching him. And that button he had in his pocket. He wouldn't let me throw it away, though goodness knows where he got such an odd thing. Button? William asked, remembering the strange object Charlie had taken from the excavation. Yes, a peculiar little thing. Not like any button I've seen. When I tried to take it away, he became so upset I feared his fever would worsen. She glanced over her shoulder, as if afraid of being overheard. Between you and me, William, I don't like it. It feels wrong somehow. William left the Martin house more confused than ever. Whatever Charlie had found at the mill seemed to have affected him strangely. And now there was James Sullivan, a boy who spoke in riddles and disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a baseball with his name on it. He needed to know more about the Sullivans. If Catherine Sullivan worked at the mill, perhaps someone in town could tell him about her and her son. William headed to Grayson's general store, where Mrs. Grayson knew everything about everyone in Holloway. The bell above the door jingled as he entered the cool, dim interior. The store smelled of coffee beans, leather, and the sweet scent of penny candy in glass jars. Mrs. Grayson, a plump woman with iron gray hair pulled into a tight bun, stood behind the counter, recording inventory in a large ledger. She looked up as William entered, pushing her spectacles higher on her nose. William Cooper, what brings you in today? More whorehound candy? No, ma'am, William replied, approaching the counter. I was wondering if you know the Sullivan family. They live in the company houses. Mrs. Grayson's pencil paused over her ledger. The Sullivans? Catherine comes in for her monthly provisions. Quiet woman, keeps to herself mostly. Why do you ask? I met her son, James. I was hoping to play baseball with him. Mrs. Grayson gave him an odd look. Is this some kind of prank, William? Because if it is, it's in very poor taste. No, ma'am. I really did meet him. Just this morning. The storekeeper set down her pencil and came around the counter. She bent slightly to look William in the eye. Child, Catherine Sullivan's boy has been missing since Thursday. The whole town's been looking for him. William felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath his feet. Missing? But I saw him. I talked to him. Mrs. Grayson's expression softened. Perhaps you saw another boy and got confused. James is only 6, with dark hair and a cap too big for him, William finished. That's him. I swear I saw him, Mrs. Grayson. This morning, at my house. The storekeeper studied him for a long moment, then sighed. William, I've known you since you were in short pants. You've never been one for tall tales. But what you're saying simply can't be true. Why not? Mrs. Grayson glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. Because they found his cap yesterday, behind the mill. Just the cap, nothing else. And she hesitated, and there was blood on it. William's hands tightened around the baseball with James's name. But I saw him. He talked to me. Mrs. Grayson straightened up, her expression troubled. I think you should go home, William, and perhaps mention this to your parents. As William turned to leave, Mrs. Grayson called after him. And William? I wouldn't go spreading stories about seeing James Sullivan. His poor mother has enough to bear without false hope. Outside the store, William stood in the bright sunshine, trying to make sense of what he'd learned. James Sullivan was missing, had been missing since Thursday, the day before William first saw him by the fence. The day before the strange conversation about digging at the mill. How could he have spoken to a missing boy? And why had James said they found me if he was still missing? Unless... A terrible thought struck William. What if James wasn't missing anymore? What if they had found him, at the mill, in the excavation? His father's words from the night before came back to him. 3 more workers quit today, after what they found. And his mother's question, is it true? Could it really be from? William had assumed they were talking about whatever was being excavated. But what if they had found James instead? But if James was dead, how had William spoken to him just hours ago? The baseball felt suddenly heavy in his hands. William looked down at it, at the childish scrawl of James Sullivan across its surface. Below the name, he now noticed something he'd missed before. A second date, 1913, 1913, 1919. Birth and death dates. William dropped the ball as if it had burned him. It hit the sidewalk with a dull thud, then rolled into the street. In the Boston University lab, Eleanor stares at her screen in disbelief. Michael, look at this. She points to the enhanced image of the baseball. There's a name written on it. James Sullivan. Michael leans in. Can you enhance it further? Eleanor's fingers fly across the keyboard, applying additional algorithms to sharpen the text. There's more. A date, I think. As the image clarifies, both researchers fall silent. Below the name is written 1913, 1919. That can't be right, Michael says. If those are birth and death dates, this boy would have died the same year the photo was taken. Eleanor sits back in her chair. Unless what? Unless this is a memorial photograph. She turns to her computer and begins typing rapidly. It was common practice in the early 20th century to photograph the deceased, especially children. Death photography was a way for families to have a lasting image of their loved ones. But he looks alive, Michael argues. His eyes are open, he's standing upright. Post-mortem photography evolved. Early examples were very explicit, but by the 1900s, photographers would pose the deceased to appear more lifelike, sometimes using supports to hold them upright. That's disturbing. Eleanor nods. By our standards, yes, but infant and child mortality was much higher then. Death was more present in everyday life. She continues searching through historical databases. Let's see if we can find any record of a James Sullivan who died in Holloway in 1919. The university's digital archives contained records from across New England, including death certificates, census data, and newspaper archives from small towns like Holloway. Eleanor navigated through the database with practiced ease, searching for any mention of the Sullivan family. Here's a census record from 1910, she noted. A Patrick and Catherine Sullivan living in Boston with their infant son James, born 1913. That matches the first date on the baseball, Michael observed. Eleanor continued searching. And here's a military record for Patrick Sullivan, enlisted in 1917, killed in action in France in 1918. So Catherine was a war widow, Michael said. That fits with the time period. Many women had to find factory work after losing their husbands in the war. After several minutes of searching, Eleanor sits back. Nothing in the official death records for James Sullivan. But wait. She clicks on a newspaper archive. Here's something from the Holloway Gazette, July 18, 1919. Tragic accident at Blackridge Mill claims life. She reads aloud. The community of Holloway was shocked yesterday by news of a tragic accident at the Blackridge textile mill. Details remain scarce as mill owner Henry Blackridge has declined to comment beyond expressing his deep regret over the incident. Sources within the mill report that a section of foundation collapsed during routine maintenance. No information about casualties has been released, though several workers have reportedly left the mill's employment in recent days. Michael frowns. That's vague. No mention of a child victim. Mills often employed children back then, despite laws against it, Eleanor explains. If a child worker died, especially illegally employed, it might have been covered up. She continues scrolling through archives. Here, a week later, a small notice. Services for James Sullivan, age 6, were held privately on Sunday. The boy is survived by his mother, Catherine Sullivan. No cause of death mentioned, Michael notes, and no connection to the mill accident. But the timing. Eleanor trails off, staring at the photograph again. Michael, I need to see the original photograph again. The physical copy. Why? We have high-resolution scans. Eleanor shakes her head. Sometimes physical photographs contain details that don't scan well. Writing on the back, alterations to the emulsion. Even the type of paper can tell us something about when and why it was taken. Michael nods. I'll contact the Holloway Historical Society, see if they'll let us examine it in person. And while you're at it, see if they have any other records from that time period. Mill employment logs, town council minutes, anything that might tell us more about what happened to James Sullivan. As Michael made the calls, Eleanor continued to study the enhanced photograph. There was something about the boy's eyes that haunted her, a knowing look that seemed at odds with his young age. And the way he held the baseball, not casually, as a child might during play, but deliberately, as if it were something precious. "What were you trying to tell us, James?" she murmured to the image on her screen. The next day, Eleanor and Michael drive to Holloway, now a sleepy suburb absorbed into greater Boston. The Historical Society is housed in what was once the town library, a small brick building with white columns. The drive from Boston took just under an hour, the modern highway replacing the dirt roads that would have connected Holloway to the city in 1919. Mrs. Winters, the elderly curator, greets them warmly. "Dr. Webb, Mr. Chen, welcome to Holloway. I've pulled the Sullivan photograph as you requested, along with everything we have from that time period." She led them through the quiet building, past glass cases displaying artifacts from Holloway's history, old tools from the mill, vintage clothing, photographs of the town through the decades. In a small research room at the back, she lays out several items: the original photograph, yellowed newspaper clippings, and a leather-bound ledger. "This is the mill's employment record from 1919, Mrs. Winters explains. "We acquired it when the building was finally demolished in 1972. And these," she indicates a stack of brittle newspapers, "are the complete Holloway Gazette from June through August 1919. Eleanor carefully examines the photograph. It's smaller than she expected, about 3x5 inches, mounted on cardboard backing that has begun to deteriorate at the edges. The image itself is remarkably clear for its age. James Sullivan staring solemnly at the camera, the baseball clutched in his small hands. "Is there anything written on the back?" she asks. Mrs. Winters turns it over carefully. Faded handwriting is barely visible. "James, summer, 1919. No photographer's mark?" Michael asks. "No, which is unusual. Most professional photographers would stamp their work." Eleanor opens the ledger, scanning through the neat columns of names and dates. The pages listed employees alphabetically, with columns for position, wage, hire date, and termination date. Sullivan, here it is. Catherine Sullivan, hired January 1919, spinner. She runs her finger across the row to the final column. Employment terminated July 17, 1919. Reason, personal. The day before the accident report in the newspaper, Michael notes. Eleanor continues flipping through the ledger. "Look at this, 17 employees terminated between July 16th and July 20th, all listed as personal or resigned. Mass exodus," Michael murmurs. "Something happened at that mill that scared people away." Mrs. Winters, who has been listening quietly, speaks up. "My grandfather worked at the mill back then. He never talked much about it, but I remember once, when I was a girl, I found an old baseball in his things. When I asked him about it, he got very upset and took it away. Said it was from a sad time and should be forgotten." Eleanor and Michael exchange glances. "Mrs. Winters," Eleanor asks carefully, "what was your grandfather's name?" "William Cooper." The name hits Eleanor like a physical force. "William Cooper? The same boy mentioned in these newspaper clippings?" She points to a yellowed article about a local baseball game where a W. Cooper was credited with pitching a winning game. Mrs. Winters nods. "That's him. He was quite the baseball player in his youth. Later became a history teacher here in Holloway." "Did he ever mention James Sullivan?" Michael asks. The elderly woman's expression grows troubled. "Not directly, but sometimes when he thought no one was listening. I heard him talking to someone named James. My grandmother said it was just his way of working through problems, talking them out as if to a friend, but I always had the sense there was more to it than that." Eleanor's excitement builds. "Mrs. Winters, did your grandfather leave any personal papers? Journals, letters, anything from that time period?" "Not that I know of," she replies, "but there might be something in the attic of the old house. My cousin lives there now. I could ask him to look." "Please do," Eleanor says. "It could be crucial to understanding what happened here." As they continue examining the materials, Michael spreads out the newspaper clippings in chronological order. "Look at this pattern," he says. Before July 17th, the paper is full of stories about the mill's expansion, Black Ridge's philanthropic efforts in town, Even plans for a new wing to be built that fall. After the 17th, barely a mention of the mill or Blackridge himself, until this. He points to a small article dated August 3rd. Blackridge found dead in office. Eleanor reads it aloud. Henry Blackridge, owner of the prosperous Blackridge textile mill, was found deceased in his office Sunday morning. The cause of death was not immediately disclosed. Mr. Blackridge, a prominent figure in local industry, had no family. Mill operations will continue under the direction of the board of directors. No mention of suicide, Michael notes. But look at the date. Just 2 weeks after the accident and James Sullivan's death, and no details about how he died? Eleanor adds. That's unusual for the time period. Newspapers then were often quite explicit about deaths, especially notable ones. Mrs. Winters nods. There were rumors, of course. My mother used to say that Blackridge shot himself, that after the accident he was never the same. Claimed to see a boy watching him from corners, following him home, standing outside his bedroom window at night. James Sullivan, Eleanor murmurs. That was the whispered story. Mrs. Winters confirms that the Sullivan boy's ghost haunted Blackridge until he couldn't bear it anymore. But why? Michael asks. What happened to James that would cause Blackridge such guilt? Mrs. Winters hesitates. My grandfather never spoke of it directly, but once when he was very old and his mind was beginning to wander, he told me something I've never forgotten. He said, some things are buried for a reason. Some grounds should never be disturbed. Back in the present, Eleanor and Michael sit in a coffee shop across from the town square, processing what they've learned. Through the window, they can see the park that now occupies the site where the Blackridge Mill once stood. A green space with benches, flower beds, and a small playground where children laugh and play in the summer sunshine. So William Cooper knew James Sullivan, Michael says, and somehow ended up with his baseball. Eleanor nods. And James died in some kind of accident at the mill that was covered up. She taps her tablet, where she's compiled their findings. But why would someone take a photograph of a deceased child holding a baseball and try to make it look like he was alive? Maybe it wasn't post-mortem, Michael suggests. Maybe the photo was taken before he died, and the date on the ball was added later, as a memorial. Then why isn't there any record of how he died? And what was the mill trying to hide? Eleanor shakes her head. We're missing something. They decide to visit the site where the mill once stood. The park is busy on this summer afternoon. Mothers watching toddlers on the swings, elderly couples strolling along the paved paths, teenagers lounging on the grass with their phones. Nothing about the peaceful scene suggests the industrial complex that once dominated the area, or the tragedy that might have occurred here. A commemorative plaque near the entrance describes the economic importance of the Blackridge Mill to early Holloway, its construction in 1885, its peak production during World War I, and its eventual closure in 1957. Nothing mentions any accident or deaths. As they walk the perimeter, Eleanor consults an old map on her tablet. The chimney would have been here, which means the north corner was approximately where that bench is now. They sit on the bench looking out over the manicured lawn that once housed a massive industrial operation. Children run past, their laughter carried on the warm breeze. Ground-penetrating radar might tell us if there's anything still down there, Michael suggests. Eleanor shakes her head. We'd need permits, approval from the city. It would take months. She looks thoughtful, but there might be another way to find out what happened. What are you thinking? William Cooper lived until 1972. That means people who knew him might still be alive. People he might have confided in about what really happened that summer. Mrs. Winters mentioned her cousin still lives in the Cooper house. Michael recalls. Maybe we should start there. But as they prepare to leave, Eleanor notices an elderly man watching them from across the park. He sits on a bench near the playground, leaning on a cane, his eyes fixed on them with unmistakable interest. Michael, she says quietly, I think someone's watching us. Michael follows her gaze. Probably just a local wondering who the strangers are. But the man is now rising from his bench, making his way slowly toward them. As he approaches, Eleanor can see he's older than she initially thought, well into his 80s, with sparse white hair and liver spots on his papery skin. Yet his eyes are sharp, intelligent. You're interested in the Sullivans? He asks without preamble. Eleanor turns. Yes, we're researchers from Boston University. We're studying local history. The man nods. Sullivan isn't local history many folks around here like to remember. He extends his hand. Robert Martin. My father was Charles Martin. He and William Cooper were there the day they found the body. Eleanor and Michael exchange shocked glances. Mr. Martin, Eleanor says carefully, Would you be willing to tell us what you know about James Sullivan? The old man looks around the empty cemetery. Not here. Some stories shouldn't be told among the dead. They might be listening. At Robert Martin's small house on the outskirts of town, they sit in a cluttered living room filled with old photographs and mementos. The house smells of mothballs and the faint medicinal scent that often accompanies the elderly. A grandfather clock in the corner ticks away the seconds with mechanical precision. Robert moves slowly to a cabinet and removes a small box, its wood darkened with age and handling. He brings it to the coffee table, settling into his armchair with a sigh. My father told me this story when I was about 30 years old. Said he'd carried it too long by himself and needed to pass it on. He opens the box and removes a folded newspaper clipping, brittle with age. This never made the Holloway Gazette. It's from the Boston Globe, August 3, 1919. The headline reads, Blackridge Mill Owner Takes Own Life. Eleanor reads aloud. Henry Blackridge, owner of the prosperous Blackridge Textile Mill in Holloway, Massachusetts, was found deceased in his office Sunday morning. An apparent suicide. Sources close to the industrialist report that he had been troubled in recent weeks following an undisclosed incident at his mill. Blackridge leaves no family. The mill's operations will continue under the management of the board of directors. 2 weeks after the accident, Michael murmurs. Robert nods. It was no accident. What happened at that mill? He takes a deep breath. According to my father, he and William Cooper discovered a child's body during their unauthorized exploration of the mill grounds. The body had been buried in a shallow grave behind the north chimney. Eleanor's hand goes to her mouth. James Sullivan. Yes, the Sullivan boy had gone missing 3 days earlier. His mother worked at the mill and sometimes brought him with her when she couldn't find anyone to watch him. The children of workers would often play in the yard behind the mill while their parents worked inside. But why would someone kill a child? Michael asks. Robert shakes his head. My father said William believed it wasn't murder exactly. At least, not intentional. He pauses. The mill had been built in 1885. By 1919, some of the foundation was crumbling. Blackridge had ordered excavation to reinforce it. During the digging, they discovered something beneath the mill, something older than the building itself. What was it? Eleanor asks. My father didn't know exactly. William would never say. Only that it was something that should have stayed buried. Something from the old days before Holloway was even a town. Indigenous artifacts, Michael suggests. Maybe. Or maybe something else. Whatever it was, James Sullivan found it first. And according to William, the boy changed after that. Became withdrawn. Spoke strangely. His mother noticed too. But by then it was too late. Too late for what? Eleanor presses. Robert looks down at his hands, liver spotted and veined with age. The way William told it to my father, James started talking about the people underground who wanted to come back through him. His mother was frightened, took him to the church, but the priest couldn't help. Then one night James wandered back to the mill alone. They found his body the next morning in the excavation pit. The official story was that he'd fallen in accidentally, but what? William and my father saw the body. They said his eyes were open, staring, and he was smiling. Robert shudders at the memory. Blackridge paid to have it all hushed up. Paid the mother, paid the workers who knew, paid the town officials. The excavation was filled in that same day. Work at the mill resumed. Then why did Blackridge kill himself 2 weeks later? Michael asks. Because the boy came back, Robert says simply. Not in body, but in spirit. Workers reported seeing him around the mill, standing in corners, watching them, always holding that baseball, the one his mother had given him for his 6th birthday. Eleanor recalls the photograph. So the photo was taken after his death, Robert confirms. William said Blackridge became obsessed with the idea that the boy's spirit was haunting the mill. He hired a spiritualist from Boston who suggested that capturing the boy's image might somehow contain him. A spiritual trap, Eleanor murmurs. Using photography as a means of binding a restless spirit. Sounds like superstition, Michael says skeptically. Robert shrugs. Maybe so. But after the photograph was taken, the sightings stopped. A week later, Blackridge shot himself. Left a note that said only, "He's still watching me." And the baseball? Eleanor asks. How did William Cooper end up with it? James gave it to him, according to my father, during one of their meetings before the accident. William kept it his whole life, said it reminded him that some things are better left undisturbed. Robert reaches into the box again and removes a smaller object wrapped in faded cloth. Carefully, he unwraps it to reveal a strange circular item, about the size of a silver dollar but thicker. It appears to be made of some dark stone, with symbols etched into its surface. This is what Charlie Martin, my father, took from the excavation. He kept it hidden his whole life, convinced it brought bad luck to anyone who touched it. Before he died, he gave it to me with strict instructions to keep it separate from anything connected to James Sullivan, especially the baseball or the photograph. Eleanor leans closer, fascinated by the object. "May I?" she asks, reaching toward it. Robert hesitates, then nods. "Be careful. Some things retain their power, even after a century. The object is surprisingly heavy for its size, and cold to the touch. The symbols etched into its surface remind Eleanor of ancient writing systems. Not quite hieroglyphics, not quite cuneiform, but something with elements of both. This doesn't look like any indigenous artifact I've seen," she comments, "and it's definitely not from European settlers. William believed it was much older," Robert says, "from people who were here long before anyone else." As they prepare to leave, Robert hands Eleanor a small, weathered leather journal. "This was William's. My father kept it after William passed in 1972. I think you should have it now. Maybe it will help you understand." "Thank you," Eleanor says, touched by his trust. "We'll take good care of it." Robert walks them to the door. As they step onto the porch, he grips Eleanor's arm with surprising strength. "Be careful with what you uncover," he warns. "Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again." Back at the university lab, Eleanor carefully digitizes William Cooper's journal. The leather binding is cracked with age, the pages yellowed and fragile. Most entries are mundane: daily activities, baseball scores, childhood concerns. But beginning July 12, 1919, the entries change. "Listen to this," she tells Michael. "Met a strange boy today. Says his name is James Sullivan. He talked about the digging at the mill. How did he know about that?" She continues reading selected entries. July 14th. "Went to the mill with Charlie. Mr. Blackridge caught us. Something's not right there. Father won't talk about it." July 15th. "James came back. He showed me his baseball. Said they found him at the mill. Who is him?" July 16th. "James wasn't at school today. His mother works at the mill. Charlie says nobody's seen him since yesterday." July 17th. "They found James at the mill. Father came home white as a sheet. Won't tell me anything. Says I'm to stay away from the mill forever." July 20th. "Dreamed about James last night. He was standing in our yard, holding his baseball, but his eyes were different, black all the way through. He said, 'It's still there, waiting. It's always been waiting.'" The entries continue, describing William's growing unease, the strange atmosphere in town, workers leaving, Blackridge's increasing paranoia. Then, on August 1st, "Mr. Blackridge came to our house today with a photographer. Had a strange device, a modified camera with silver mirrors around the lens. Said he needed my help. I took them to where I last saw James in our yard. The photographer set up his equipment. We waited for hours. Just before sunset, James appeared. He looked normal again. Sad. He was holding his baseball. The photographer took the picture. James vanished as the flash went off. Mr. Blackridge seemed relieved, said, 'We've captured him now.' I'm not sure what he meant." August 4th. "Mr. Blackridge died yesterday. Shot himself in his office. Before he died, he gave me James's baseball. Said to keep it safe, never to destroy it. Said as long as the photograph and the ball exist separately, it can't use the boy to come back." What does he mean by it? Michael wonders. Eleanor continues reading. The journal becomes increasingly cryptic in the following entries, with William describing strange dreams and occasional glimpses of James around town. Years pass between entries as William grows up, goes to college, serves in World War II, marries, has children, but occasional mentions of James persist throughout his life. 1932. Saw him today near the old mill. First time in years. He hasn't aged. Still holding that baseball. I keep his real one locked in my desk. 1943. During the bombing in North Africa, thought I saw him standing among the ruins. Same cap, same ball, same eyes. It can't be. 1957. My son found the baseball today. Asked to play with it. I nearly lost my mind with fear. Locked it away in the bank vault instead. Some things must remain separated. The final entry, dated March 1972, just months before William's death. They're tearing down the old mill next week, after all these years. I went to see it one last time. James was there, watching from the north corner. He pointed to the ground and shook his head. What will happen when they disturb that ground again? Will whatever was buried there before the mill finally escape? The photograph keeps him contained, but for how long? Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. Eleanor closes the digital file. William Cooper believed that whatever James found beneath the mill somehow possessed or changed him, and that the photograph was taken as a kind of spiritual containment. Michael looks skeptical. It sounds like trauma-induced delusion. A child died tragically, and the adults created an elaborate supernatural explanation to process their guilt. Maybe, Eleanor concedes. But what if there was something else? Something they found during the excavation. She opens another file on her computer, the enhanced photograph of James. I've been running additional enhancement algorithms focused on the background details. Behind the boy, previously obscured in shadow and grain, details emerge. The weathered fence, a portion of the mill chimney visible in the distance, and something else, a dark shape on the ground near the boy's feet. Is that a hole in the ground? Michael asks, leaning closer. Eleanor enhances the section further. Not a hole, a shadow, but it doesn't match the boy's position relative to the light source. She points to other shadows in the image. See? The sun was behind the photographer. All shadows should fall behind the subjects, but this shadow falls toward the camera. Michael finishes, and it's the wrong shape. The shadow stretches toward the camera, elongated and distorted, with what appear to be too many limbs like a spider's silhouette. That can't be right, Michael says. It must be a flaw in the original photograph. Eleanor shakes her head. No, it's present in the original. Our enhancement just made it visible. She stares at the image. The boy is looking directly at the camera. But what if he's not looking at the photographer? What do you mean? What if he's looking at whatever cast that shadow? The implication hangs in the air between them, neither willing to voice the conclusion aloud. Finally, Michael breaks the silence. Even if we accept the idea that something supernatural was involved, which I'm not saying I do, what does it have to do with us, now, a century later? Eleanor gestures to the journal. William's last entry suggests he was worried about the mill's demolition, about what might happen when they disturbed the ground again. That was in 1972. What if whatever was there is still there, beneath the park? That's a big leap, Michael says. And even if there is something unusual buried there, it's been undisturbed for 50 years. Has it? Eleanor pulls up another file, a news article from the local Holloway paper dated just 3 months ago. Park renovation to begin this fall. The article details plans for a comprehensive renovation of the park, including new playground equipment, improved drainage systems, and, most significantly, a decorative fountain to be installed in the center of the park, requiring excavation to a depth of 8 feet. The center of the park, Eleanor says quietly. Right where the north corner of the mill would have been. That night, Eleanor can't sleep. She keeps thinking about the photograph, about William's journal, about the strange shadow. Around 3 a.m., she returns to her computer and begins researching the history of Holloway before the mill was built. She discovers that before European settlement, the area was considered sacred ground by local indigenous tribes. Early colonist accounts describe it as a place the Native Americans avoided, claiming it was a thin place where spirits could pass between worlds. In 1834, a religious commune briefly settled the area, but abandoned it after less than a year, citing unwholesome influences that caused disturbing dreams and visions among the faithful. The land remained uninhabited until 1885, when Henry Blackridge Sr., father of the mill owner, purchased it for his textile operation, attracted by the nearby river for water power. As dawn breaks, Eleanor makes a decision. She calls Michael. I need to go back to Holloway, she tells him, to where the mill stood. Now? Why? Because I think I understand what William Cooper was trying to say. Whatever they found beneath the mill in 1919 is still there, and I think the photograph was never about containing James's spirit. It was about keeping something else trapped. Eleanor, it's 6 a.m. This can wait until a reasonable hour. No, it can't. She's already gathering her things. Laptop, the original photograph on loan from the Historical Society, William's journal. I think James Sullivan has been trying to warn people for a century. First William, then others who saw the photograph, now us. There's a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Michael sighs. I'll pick you up in 20 minutes. But Eleanor, this is probably nothing more than an interesting historical mystery and your sleep-deprived imagination. I hope you're right, she replies. I really do. They arrive at the park that once housed the Black Ridge Mill just as the sun is rising. The place is deserted, morning dew still clinging to the grass. The playground equipment casts long shadows across the lawn, metal structures silhouetted against the pink-gold light of dawn. Eleanor carries her laptop and the original photograph, which Mrs. Winters reluctantly allowed them to borrow for further research. She moves with purpose, heading directly to the center of the park. Where exactly was the north corner? Michael asks as they walk across the damp lawn. Eleanor consults the old map she's loaded on her tablet. According to this, we're standing almost exactly where the excavation would have been. She opens her laptop, displaying the enhanced photograph. Look at the perspective. Based on the chimney in the background, the photographer was standing approximately where that tree is now, facing this direction. They position themselves accordingly, Eleanor holding up the original photograph to compare the landscape. The background doesn't match anymore, Michael notes. Too many changes over a century. But the ground is the same, Eleanor says quietly. Whatever was beneath the mill is still here. As if on cue, a cool breeze sweeps across the park, rustling the leaves overhead. Eleanor feels a sudden chill that has nothing to do with the morning air. What exactly are we looking for? Michael asks. Before Eleanor can answer, her laptop screen flickers. The image of James Sullivan distorts, pixelating before resolving again. For a brief moment, Eleanor thinks she sees the boy turn his head slightly, looking not at the camera but off to one side. "Did you see that?" she gasps. Michael leans over. "See what?" The screen glitched for a second. Eleanor stares at the image, now perfectly still again. "I thought, never mind." She sets the laptop on a nearby bench and takes out the original photograph, studying it in the growing morning light. As she tilts it slightly, trying to catch more light, she notices something odd, a faint discoloration on the back that wasn't visible in the Historical Society's dim research room. "Michael, do you have a UV light on your phone?" He nods, activating the feature and holding it over the photograph's back. Under the ultraviolet light, faint writing appears, spidery text that spans the cardboard backing. What is bound by silver and light remains caught between worlds. The Guardian watches. The gate stays closed. Below this cryptic message is a crude symbol, a circle with intricate patterns inside that Eleanor recognizes from her research as similar to indigenous protective sigils. "It's a warning," she murmurs, "or a spell of some kind." Michael frowns. "This is getting too weird, Eleanor. We came here to digitize historical photographs, not chase ghost stories." "It's not about ghosts," Eleanor insists. "It's about history, buried history. Something happened here that was deliberately erased from records." She looks around the peaceful park, something everyone wanted to forget. As she speaks, her laptop screen flickers again. This time, both of them see it. The image of James shifts, his eyes moving to look directly out of the screen, his mouth opening slightly as if he's about to speak. Michael steps back. "That's not possible." Eleanor moves closer to the screen. "James, are you trying to tell us something?" The image freezes, then pixelates violently before resolving again. But now the boy's expression has changed. His previous solemn look has been replaced by a small, unsettling smile. The baseball in his hands appears to have rotated, revealing more of the writing on its surface. Eleanor zooms in on the text. Below James's name and the years of his short life, new words have appeared. "He's still here." The laptop suddenly shuts down, the screen going black despite being fully charged. "Okay, that's enough," Michael says firmly. "This is some kind of elaborate prank or software glitch. There's a rational explanation." Eleanor isn't listening. She's staring at the ground beneath their feet. What if it wasn't James they were trying to contain? What if it was something else? Something that found him first when they started digging. She takes out her phone and opens a ground scanning app designed for archaeological surveys. A simplified version of professional equipment, but effective enough for preliminary scans. "This won't penetrate very deep," she warns, "but it might show if there's anything unusual directly beneath us." She walks slowly in a grid pattern, eyes fixed on her phone screen. After several minutes, she stops. "Michael, look at this." The scan shows a perfect circle beneath the soil, approximately 12 feet in diameter, centered exactly where they're standing. "Could be an old water pipe or irrigation system for the park," Michael suggests, though his voice lacks conviction. "It's too regular, too perfect," Eleanor counters. "And look, the density reading is off the charts. Whatever this is, it's solid and large." As they stand discussing the scan, neither notices the subtle darkening of the sky above them, clouds gathering despite the clear forecast. A distant rumble of thunder finally draws their attention upward. "Storm's coming," Michael says. "We should go." Eleanor shakes her head. "Not yet. I need to understand what happened here." She pulls up William Cooper's journal on her phone. Listen to this entry from August 2nd, 1919, the day after the photograph was taken. Mr. Blackridge came to see me again today. He looked terrible, hadn't slept, hadn't changed his clothes. He gave me the baseball and made me promise to keep it separate from the photograph. Said as long as they remain apart, the circle stays closed. Said the boy is the guardian now, trapped between here and there. Said he can't bear to look at those eyes anymore, knowing what's behind them, waiting. A gust of wind sweeps across the park, unusually cold for summer. Eleanor's phone screen flickers, then dies. In the sudden silence, they hear it, a soft, thudding sound, like a ball bouncing on packed earth. They turn slowly. At the edge of the park stands a small figure in outdated clothes, a cap pulled low over his eyes. In his hands, he holds a baseball. That's not possible, Michael whispers. The figure raises his head, revealing the face they know from the photograph, James Sullivan, unchanged after 105 years. His eyes meet Eleanor's and he slowly shakes his head, a warning. Eleanor takes a step toward him. James, what are you trying to tell us? The boy points to the ground beneath their feet, then makes a pushing motion with his hands, as if urging them to leave. Thunder cracks directly overhead. When they look back, the boy is gone. We need to go, Michael says urgently. Now. But Eleanor is rooted to the spot, staring at the ground. The photograph was an anchor, she says slowly. Not to trap James, but to give him form so he could continue guarding whatever is down there. The first heavy raindrops begin to fall. As the water hits the ground around them, Eleanor notices something strange. The soil where the circular object lies beneath is not absorbing the water. Instead, the drops beat on the surface, as if hitting glass. The ground is changing, she says, her voice barely audible over the increasing rainfall. Michael grabs her arm. Eleanor, we need to leave. As he pulls her away, Eleanor feels the ground shift beneath her feet. Not an earthquake, but something more localized, as if the earth itself is stretching. They hurry toward their car as the rain intensifies. Looking back, Eleanor sees something that stops her heart. Where they had been standing, the ground has begun to darken, not from the rain, but as if something beneath the surface is pressing upward, stretching the soil like a membrane. In the Boston University lab 3 days later, Eleanor sits alone, staring at her computer screen. The photograph of James Sullivan is open in one window, the enhanced version in another. Both are completely normal now. No movement, no changes in expression, no new text appearing on the baseball. Just a solemn-faced boy from 1919 holding a baseball in front of a weathered fence. The door opens, and Michael enters, carrying 2 coffee cups. Any changes? He asks, setting one cup beside her. Eleanor shakes her head. Nothing. Whatever happened in the park, it's stopped. They haven't spoken much about what they experienced. The apparition of James, the strange behavior of the ground, the perfect circle beneath the surface. As they'd driven away, the storm had intensified to near hurricane levels over Holloway, forcing roads to close. News reports called it a freak microburst, unprecedented in local weather records. When they returned the next day, the park was roped off. A sinkhole had opened during the storm, authorities said. Engineers were brought in to assess the stability of the surrounding ground. I spoke with the lead engineer, Michael says now, sipping his coffee. Off the record, he said they found something unusual in the sinkhole. Eleanor looks up sharply. What? A circular stone structure, approximately 12 feet in diameter. Perfectly preserved despite being over 300 years old, according to initial dating. Covered in markings they haven't been able to identify. A well? A cistern? Michael shakes his head. No. The engineer said, he said it looked like a lid, like something designed to cover a hole, not line it. He pauses. They're filling it with concrete tomorrow, reinforcing the entire area. Eleanor turns back to the photograph, covering it up again, just like in 1919. Maybe that's for the best, Michael suggests quietly. Some things are meant to stay buried. Eleanor doesn't respond. She's staring at the image of James Sullivan, at his serious eyes that had, for one moment in the park, seemed to look directly at her with an urgent warning. What do you think would have happened? She finally asks. If we'd stayed longer? If whatever is down there had broken through? Michael has no answer. They sit in silence for a long moment. What will you write in your paper? He eventually asks. About the Sullivan photograph? Eleanor considers this. The truth, that it's an unusual example of early 20th century photography, possibly post-mortem. with cultural significance to the local history of Holloway. Nothing about the other things we saw. She shakes her head. Some histories aren't meant to be written. She closes the image files and opens a new document. Some secrets need guardians. As she begins typing her academic paper, Eleanor glances at the drawer where she's locked the original photograph. For a moment, she thinks she hears a faint sound, like a baseball bouncing on packed earth. Just once, then silence. In Holloway Park, as engineers prepare to pour concrete into the ancient circle, a small boy in outdated clothes watches from a distance, a baseball clutched in his hands. No one notices him. They never do. He's been standing guard for 105 years, and he will continue to watch for as long as necessary, because some doors, once discovered, must never be opened.